Okay, with this video, what I like to do is I like to kind of talk about the concept of a nav mesh. Um, a nav mesh is short for navigational mesh, and basically it's just like a bitmap or a grid, if you will. You could use a two-dimensional array if you want to do it that way, or you can simply use a bitmap. Um, And basically, it defines where an NPC or a player can walk. And it's a fast way to calculate pathing. Okay, so for example, let's say you have a 3D world and try to imagine a 3D world not as you see it visually, right? So you can see all these NPCs, trees, cars, buildings. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as numbers. It's just a bunch of numbers. So, how do you determine where in all these numbers can you walk? Because that's how the computer sees it. The numbers are defined in data sets, you can call that structures, and then those structures are processed in a particular order. You could call that a depth buffer, which is how deep objects are in the distance. You know, you have your XYZ points in XYZ space. So the math can get complicated, and if you add a lot of NPCs and a lot of objects, there's a lot of calculations to go through. And in the next video, I'll kind of talk about hitboxes and why it seems kind of janky. At least the way that I'm looking at it, the choices, it seems to be the choices they made. I completely understand it, but I just thought I would share it for those who might not know these things. All right, so to start out with, I'm going to be using actually GIMP. So we're going to be using GIMP. It's a free editing tool similar to Photoshop, not as nearly as powerful, but it can do a lot of things. And it definitely doesn't cost $1,000+ bucks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to look up Sanctuary, which I've already done. So this is like a top view of Sanctuary. Okay, so I'm going to go in and copy this image. I'm going to grab this image. We're going to go over here to GIMP, and I'm going to create a bitmap from the clipboard, from the image I just copied. Okay, and then we're going to use our magic wand, and we're going to try to select this brown color, and then we're going to bucket fill green. Okay, so this is a 2D bitmap. There is no 3D space, so it's basically X and Y. So even though you have 3D space, you can define, if you've ever been in the creation kit, and I've seen this, but I haven't really played around with it too much, but I understand the concept of it. You have a road, or you have an area that is defined as where you can walk on it. I mean, you can walk on top of the houses too. You can do those kind of things. But that's not really a nav mesh. That's just simply collision detection on a mesh. Um, so you have these roads and this ground you can walk on, and the player can walk. Now the player can make choices, conscious choices that an NPC cannot. You can code certain branched choices for that NPC. So the NPC could seem to have a certain intelligence or AI, but that's usually defined by a programmer. Whereas an actual person might say, I need to get on top of that house. I'm going to jump on this box, and I'm going to, kind of alley-oop off this tree, and the next thing you know, I'm on top of the roof. Well, a programmer, unless he specifically codes something to do that, or has kind of an AI, adaptive AI curve, it's not going to happen. So the easiest thing to do is to create a nav mesh, and basically, even though you're in 3D space, it's just a 2D grid, and it can be 3D in that the actual grid can be on elevation, or you could test the elevation of the ground or a mesh beneath it to give you height data, so it looks like you're walking up a hill. But basically, imagine if all of this was green. So this is green, and you're going to drop a box. All right, so let's go over here, and I'm not a GIMP expert, but let's say we go over here and we drop a house. So until this point, we can walk through this area because we go to move to this XY position or XYZ position. We take the XY position, we map it to our, we just simply use just very simple math to scale it and map it to our bitmap here, which is our nav mesh. And if we can walk this, if there's a green dot, we can walk it. So let's see if we can X this out. So let's say we put another house here. Now this is a dynamic nav mesh. Technically, it can all be dynamic because you have a flat nav mesh, and then the game adds objects. It kind of stamps out sections of this nav mesh based on what object is there. And this is just a concept. I'm not actually sure how the game actually does it, but this is how I would do it. So you can stamp out this section of this nav mesh. So I've just put a house here or a car. Now, if I'm looking for green dots, I notice there is no green dot, right? So we're going to go over here, and we're going to create our path, right? So we're walking this way. Let's see, where's our, let's do okay. I can see I'm definitely not I have no idea why that doesn't work. I am definitely not a GIMP person, so yeah, I have no idea. Alright, but just try to envision this with me. Yeah. Oh, maybe it's, no, I have no idea. Oh, it's probably this. Alright, let's see if we can select all of this, maybe. Let's see. Will that make a difference? Okay, so that made a difference. Alright. So let's say we're walking through here, and before, we're looking for green pixels. We don't have a green pixel. Now, instead of walking, let's assume that we are right here, and we're calculating a path. So we want to calculate our nav mesh path. So the game starts saying, well, I need to be here. This is my final destination. So how can I get there? So it says I'm here. I'm starting to calculate a path. You can say the quickest route, or the fastest route is between two lines. The shortest distance is between two lines. So you start looking at, go, well, I can't do that because there's no green dots. So I'm going to have to calculate another path. So we might calculate this till we have it no more, and then we can go straight. Now this type of pathing looks fairly robotic. If you see somebody walk, then turn right, then turn left, you could definitely tell that's AI and that's robotic. And you can clean that up by adding subtleties. So you can clean that up by saying, okay, I know I can get here, so let's do a curve, right? So in a sense, you've done. Let's take this out, right? And then let's say that we calculate. We got to go here, 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 to here. So we know we can. So instead of going here and walking, we calculate a curve and then go straight there, and that gives the illusion that this NPC just walked past whatever it was I've dropped. Now let's say that why does the character get stuck? Like, why does he seem to run in place here? Like, instead of doing all of this, why does the character seem to go straight into something and just keep running? Well, here's what I think happened. What I think happened is there's a certain calculation it takes to calculate pathing information. So NPCs idle. Part of what Bethesda did is have them simply idle. So they're doing some kind of idle while pathing information is being calculated in the background. Once pathing information is complete and the idle has completed, it will then proceed to path to wherever it's going. And it's a way to hide or mask what the application or what the game is actually doing. And when you look at it, it's I think Todd once said it's a bunch of very, very extremely simple systems that when you put them together make it looks like it makes it look very complex. So basically, it's trying to find a path. When it finds one, or let's say it doesn't find a path, and and the NPC is idling. If it doesn't find a path, it'll either idle again, it'll idle and do something else, or it just stands there. It doesn't know what to do. So, but once it finds the pathing information, it will then say, okay, I know I can't go here because there's no green dots. So then I'm going to path around to here, and then the NPC will move. So I think it gets stuck on an object because that pathing information has already been generated, but the NPC hasn't used it yet. And then you go into workbench mode or something, you stamp something down, and then all of a sudden it says I'm going to execute that pathing information, and then it just simply he's like, well, this shouldn't be here. I should be able to move forward. I can't move forward because there's no way to move, um, because something's there, whether it's mesh collision or a nav mesh thing like this. Um, so it just simply can't move. Now that doesn't explain all instances of NPCs can't moving. So I think that if it's hitting an object, there's something wrong with the pathing. There's something wrong with the pathing logic, or it's not triggering a recalculation of the pathing, because technically it shouldn't run in place. If an NPC can't go forward, it should immediately look and say, okay, is 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 there something it can't is the nav I'm trying to think how to put this. Based on the nav mesh, can I go forward? And if the answer is yes, but there's an object in front of them and it's checking mesh collision, you're going to run in place. So there's a disjoint between the actual dynamic nav mesh, which is where the nav mesh, because technically I think all nav meshes are, all nav mesh instances are going to be dynamic, because I don't think the houses are built into the nav mesh. The nav mesh is just simply a big area. And then the game says, okay, even though these are sanctuary houses here, let me go ahead and make this bigger so I can access the thing. Even though these houses are, even though these houses are vanilla, it still stamps it down because it knows the XY position, and it just simply calculates that rectangle, and then just basically does this kind of thing here, 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 and here, right? Okay. Um, so I think there's a problem when it calculates that, and that there's a disjoint between the nav mesh and an actual object collision, and then therefore, according to the pathing, either it didn't recalculate or it did calculate anything. Hey man, I can still move forward based on the nav mesh. The pixels are still green on that 2D grid, but all of a sudden my collision detection says I'm hitting something. So there's a disjoint between that. And if you ever notice when you're running near water, you'll actually see water trails that are at least 15, 20 foot from the character. So that's even in Fallout 4. So the water trails don't match up with your feet sometimes. Where NPCs fall through roofs and fall out of the sky and different things like that. So I think that's an inherent bug to the game engine that was never addressed. Um, so that may all be part of this nav mesh disjoint kind of issue thing. I've got one more to make real quick. I hope that helps with some of that, like how that stuff works, and using a nav mesh is much faster than trying to calculate all the math. So you can squeeze more. Um, I don't want to say actions, but more slices into a given time period to keep your frame rates high. Um, but yeah, I hope that helps. And if it's something, if you know this, is, I definitely not an expert at this, but conceptually, I completely get it. I hope that's how. I hope I didn't misinform anybody. And if I did, somebody please just kind of let me know. To say, dude, that's like total garbage. Whatever you want to say is cool. So, anyways, I hope that helps, and have fun with your game.